Welcome to Pulse America News. I am KUNDI, and what you are about to hear right now will leave you absolutely speechless. The situation unfolding across the Gulf region at this very moment is something that historians will be writing about for decades to come. Stay with me, because every single second of this report matters, and what happens in the next few hours could change the entire balance of power in the Middle East forever. Emergency alerts are being sent to every single mobile phone across Qatar right now. Every phone is buzzing. Every screen is lighting up. People are frozen in fear, not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go, not knowing how to process what is happening around them. The sounds of massive explosions have been reported in Doha, and the entire country has been shaken to its core. People who have lived in this region for years, people who built their lives and businesses here, are now rushing toward the airports with nothing but fear in their eyes and whatever they could carry in their hands. Now let me tell you exactly what is happening and why this matters, not just for the Gulf region, but for the entire world, including you, wherever you are watching this right now. Missiles and drones have been intercepted over Qatar, but some have reportedly struck the Al Udeid Air Base. For those who do not know, Al Udeid is the largest American military air base in the entire region. There is no bigger American military presence anywhere in this part of the world, and now that base has been hit. Think about what that means. Think about the chain of events that a single strike on the largest American military installation in the Middle East sets into motion. This is not a small incident. This is not something that gets resolved over a phone call or a diplomatic meeting. This is a massive escalation, and the entire world needs to understand the gravity of what is unfolding right now. People at the airports in Qatar and across the Gulf are not waiting around to see what happens next. They are leaving. Americans are leaving. Europeans are leaving. People who came from every corner of the world to build businesses, to invest, to work, to live their best lives in one of the wealthiest regions on the planet are now grabbing their passports and boarding whatever flight is available. It does not matter where the flight is going. People are saying they will figure out connecting flights later. They will sort out transit arrangements later. They will deal with everything else later. The only thing that matters right now is getting out. And the saddest part of all this is that many of these people may never come back. The region that attracted millions of tourists, millions of investors, millions of workers from around the globe is now watching those very same people run for the exit. Let me tell you something important that most media outlets are not emphasizing enough. Qatar's Prime Minister personally called the Iranian Foreign Minister just yesterday, a direct call at the highest level of diplomacy, asking for restraint, asking for calm, asking for the attacks to stop. And yet, despite that call, despite that direct communication between heads of state, the attacks continued today. Now, the Iranian Foreign Minister is considered a reasonable and sensible individual by many diplomatic observers, but here is the painful reality of the situation. Even if he personally wanted to stop the attacks, he could not. The orders have already been given at the highest levels of Iranian leadership, and those orders are being followed by commanders on the ground who are not waiting for permission to act. When the leadership structure is disrupted the way it has been, the chain of command does not simply pause and wait for new instructions. The attacks continue because that is what the orders say to do. Now, here is something that has created a completely new diplomatic crisis on top of everything else that is already happening. American officials have claimed that Indian ports were used in military operations against Iran. India has reacted with absolute fury to these claims, calling them completely false and accusing the Americans of spreading misinformation. India has pushed back strongly, and the relationship between Washington and New Delhi is now under serious strain because of these statements. This is how wide this conflict is spreading. We are no longer talking about a contained regional dispute. We're talking about a situation that is pulling in major world powers and creating new diplomatic tensions between countries that were not even directly involved in the original conflict. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Let that sink in for a moment. The Strait of Hormuz, through which a massive percentage of the world's oil supply passes every single day, is shut down. Approximately 200 ships are currently stuck and waiting in waters near Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Nobody knows when the strait will reopen. Nobody can give a timeline. Nobody can promise that the situation will stabilize. And while those ships sit there going nowhere, the global economy is beginning to feel the pressure in ways that will affect ordinary people everywhere. China is deeply alarmed by all of this. The Chinese government has now instructed its largest oil refining companies to stop all exports of diesel, gasoline, and other petroleum products. The reasoning is straightforward. With global supply chains for energy now thrown into complete uncertainty, China needs to protect its own domestic reserves and ensure that its own people and industries have what they need. So China is pulling back from the international energy market at exactly the moment when the world needs stable supply the most. The ripple effects of this decision alone will be felt from Asia to Europe to the Americas. The American defense systems in Qatar, including the early warning systems that are supposed to detect and intercept incoming threats, have reportedly experienced serious failures. Attack after attack is happening across different countries in the region, one after another, in a pattern that suggests a coordinated and sustained campaign, rather than isolated incidents. Qatar is particularly alarmed because it supplies natural gas to a significant portion of the entire world. The country holds enormous leverage over global energy markets, and the idea that Qatar could become a sustained battlefield is terrifying, not just for the people who live there, but for every country that depends on Qatari energy exports to keep the lights on and the factories running. Iran has made its position absolutely clear. The message from Iranian leadership is stark and unambiguous. They have stated that they will not listen to anyone, that they will not stop, and that the damage done to them has been so severe that they intend to respond with equal or greater force against everyone involved. This is not the language of a country looking for a way out. This is the language of a country that has decided it has nothing left to lose and is going to fight until the very end. Now let us talk about what Iran is actually targeting and why, because understanding the strategy here is absolutely critical to understanding where this conflict is heading. Iranian strikes have now hit American oil tankers operating in the region. This is an enormous escalation. When you move from hitting military installations to hitting commercial vessels carrying oil, you are sending a message that no one and nothing is off limits. You are signaling that the economic consequences of this war will be felt by everyone, not just the countries with soldiers on the ground. There are reports that pro-American Kurdish forces are now positioning themselves along the Iranian border, preparing for potential operations inside Iranian territory. This is exactly the scenario that Iran has warned about repeatedly. If the conflict moves inside Iranian borders in the form of internal armed conflict, Iranian leadership has made clear that the response will be total and unrestricted. Every weapon in the arsenal, every target that can be reached, no exceptions and no mercy. Think about that for a moment. When a country feels that its very existence is under threat, when it feels that it is being attacked from outside and destabilized from within at the same time, the calculations of proportional response go completely out the window. Iran is a country with a deeply rooted culture of sacrifice and resistance. The history of Karbala, the tradition of standing firm even in the face of certain death, is not just ancient history in Iran. It is a living, breathing ideology that shapes how millions of people in that country think about sacrifice, resistance, and what it means to fight for something you believe in. When you threaten people with death, and their response is that they have already accepted the possibility of death, your threats lose all their power. This is the fundamental strategic problem that America is now facing in this conflict. The tools that work against adversaries who are afraid of dying do not work against adversaries who have made peace with the idea of dying. Threatening greater destruction only deepens their resolve. Promising devastation only hardens their commitment. The same lesson was demonstrated in Afghanistan, and yet here we are again in a different country facing the same unmovable reality. Now let us talk about the real reason why Qatar and other Gulf countries are being targeted. Iran's message to these countries is direct and uncomfortable. The argument being made is that Gulf nations have been providing economic oxygen to American military power in the region. When Gulf countries sell oil in dollars, they strengthen the American financial system. When Gulf countries invest hundreds of billions of dollars in American markets and American assets, they are funding the very military machine that is now being used against Iran. According to this logic, the Gulf countries are not innocent bystanders. They are active participants in the economic infrastructure that makes American military operations possible. And therefore, according to Iranian thinking, they are legitimate targets until they change their behavior. Now, whether you agree with that logic or not, whether you find it morally acceptable or completely outrageous, you need to understand that this is the actual reasoning driving these attacks. Iran is not attacking Qatar because it has a personal dispute with Qatar. Iran is attacking Qatar because Qatar hosts the largest American air base in the region, and because Gulf money flowing into American investments is seen as directly enabling American military operations. The question that every Gulf leader is now asking in private, even if they cannot say it publicly, is this: is our alliance with America worth this price? Is having American military bases on our soil, is investing trillions of dollars in American markets, is being seen as partners with Washington actually making us safer, or is it making us targets? These are questions that would have been unthinkable to ask openly just a few years ago. Today, they are the most urgent questions in every palace and every government office across the Gulf. The property markets across the entire Gulf region have effectively collapsed overnight. Real estate developers who were building luxury towers and premium residential communities are now sitting on assets that nobody wants to buy. Brokers who built their entire careers and their entire income around the Gulf property market are watching everything they worked for dissolve in real time. When buyers disappear and supply stays the same, prices only go in one direction, and that direction is straight down. The investors, the billionaires, the ultra-wealthy individuals who poured enormous amounts of money into luxury properties and premium assets across the UAE, Qatar, and surrounding countries are now looking at their portfolios and asking themselves a question that has no comfortable answer. What exactly did we just invest in? The luxury sectors of Dubai and Doha and other Gulf cities have been hit especially hard. These were the areas that attracted the wealthiest people from around the world. The most expensive restaurants, the most exclusive hotels, the most prestigious residential addresses on the planet were all concentrated in this region. And now those very areas are seeing the most dramatic impact because the people who drove demand for luxury are exactly the people who have the means and the mobility to leave immediately when things get dangerous. American consulates in the region are now being targeted as well. Qatar has already advised all civilians to evacuate the areas surrounding the American consulate. Entire neighborhoods near American diplomatic facilities are being cleared out. This is what the situation looks like on the ground right now. Not statistics on a screen, not talking heads arguing about geopolitics in a television studio. Real people leaving their homes, real neighborhoods being emptied, real cities that were symbols of modern prosperity and human achievement, now becoming symbols of something very different. Let me be very direct with you about something important. This entire catastrophic situation across the Gulf, this destruction of property markets, this collapse of tourism, this disruption of global energy supplies, this humanitarian crisis unfolding at airports, all of it traces back to one source: a conflict that the Gulf countries had absolutely nothing to do with originally. A conflict that was not their fight, a conflict in which they had no direct stake. And yet, that conflict has been brought directly to their doorstep, and they are paying an enormous price for it. The fundamental question that every observer of this situation must grapple with is whether American protection of its allies is actually providing security, or whether it is attracting danger. If the presence of American bases makes a country a target rather than a protected partner, then the entire logic of that security arrangement needs to be questioned. The Gulf countries are now living through the most painful possible version of that question. Even if this conflict ends tomorrow, and there is currently no clear sign that it will end anytime soon, the recovery will take years. The reputation damage alone will take years to repair. The investor confidence that was shattered will take years to rebuild. The tourists who left and decided they are never coming back will not suddenly return because a ceasefire was announced. Trust is not rebuilt overnight. Safety perceptions do not change because a press release says the shooting has stopped. The Gulf region as a global destination for business and tourism and investment has been fundamentally transformed by what is happening right now, and not in a positive direction. Iran has made one thing perfectly clear throughout all of this. If Israel attacks, Iran will respond against Israel. If America attacks alongside Israel, Iran will respond against both Israel and America and all American assets anywhere in the region. That is the stated policy. That is the declared red line. And based on everything we are seeing right now, Iran is following through on exactly what it said it would do. This is Kundi reporting for Pulse America News. Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Share this report everywhere you can because the world needs to understand what is truly happening in this region right now. And please subscribe to Pulse America News so you never miss a critical update as this situation continues to develop.